Greetings and welcome to 2025 and World of Monsters, a year in review of 2024. We will begin with the first video, which was this 2023 review of the year, and it gives me an opportunity to kind of tell you what these videos are for, by the way, as I think these are great for newcomers to the channel, new subscribers to the channel that are kind of wondering what all I have done in the year and what the channel is sort of about, as well as my regular subscribers whom YouTube doesn't send notifications for. Here's another chance for you to possibly catch up with what I've been doing on the channel. Just remember, content creators or influencers, that YouTube is not the place for building communities. Not anymore, and not for quite a few years now. That is dead. It's a search engine, and barely even that, as it's not an honest one, or should I say unbiased one, as they do choose which content to push. So that was the first video of 2024, and after that, the next video that came up, because I started getting all of my board games, and this was kind of the year finishing up with that, because I had a lot of Kickstarters that I backed previously, and I had different plans for World of Monsters and incorporating board games and such, but nonetheless, during the pandemic, I backed a lot of board games and a lot of wonderfully monstrous board games with beautiful little plastics in them. Plastic miniatures is obviously what I'm talking about. And what I like to do is not just unboxings and go through all that, because this channel isn't about board games. Therefore, how I kind of like to focus on the unboxings to make it more interesting for myself as well as you, because I don't like to do full unboxings in front of the camera, because I do want to go more in depth and kind of look at the things, right? And that's just going to be boring for most of you out there. So my unboxings entail looking at all the miniatures, and this was a board game that came out from the IP of Heroes of Might and Magic. That's not really the IP, but the best one of them, Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Simply love that game. I should delve more into those monsters there, but they did a beautiful job on reimagining the monsters from that game as far as the concept art to miniature. And that's what I present in the video, is the miniatures for that. After that, I created another monster review video where I review the monster, literally review it by its design, by how deep its lore is and all that. And then at the end of the review, I give it a scoring of ultimately how epic of a monster it is in a tier, on a tier score. And well, this year we did, or last year, we did the Western dragon, or the European dragon, depending on how you want to refer to it. Your basic fantasy dragon with wings. So that was fun to do and a great start for the year. After that, I did a board game review, and I already did one the previous year of Village Attacks. Again, it's not a board game channel, but they incorporate monstrous themes and things, particularly the ones I enjoy. Although, coming back to what's present here, the Wingspan one is one of the few board games that does not feature monsters, although it features wildlife and animals. I mean, essentially birds, many birds and all the species, and it's awesome in that, because if you don't know, and I've repeated it before many times, I started the channel as a love for animals and wildlife, and this channel is sort of an exploration into the unexplored, and that's what I find monsters to be, the unexplored bestiary out there. So, you know, in a way, birds still kind of relate to the channel, but I'm not gonna push that or force that, because I know a lot of people won't agree with it. So I'm just going to be honest. It's going to be one of the few board games that does not feature actual monsters. But I wanted to include it because I don't feel like I need to open a whole nother channel for board game reviews. And it's something I enjoy and I want to present here. And I'll be presenting the miniatures and things like that, the monstrous ones. And anyway, I'm also focused in solo board gaming, so I figured that'd be a fun one. The point is, you guys are going to see what you're going to want to see anyway. It's not like my content is going to be pushed on you. YouTube will not probably notify you again of any of my videos, even if you are subscribed. So the way you're going to find it is by specifically looking out for it, maybe by searching for it, or by actually going to our channel and searching it out that way. So you're not going to be really bothered by some stuff that's less related or not in your particular area of interest, monstrous interest. And that's been thing with this channel from the beginning is I covered so many monstrous themes and genres, from cryptozoology to monsters of movies to mythology to video games. Such a broad spectrum of monsters that a lot of people would zone out when I get to the different genres. So it's always been like that. It's always been a world of monsters. Somebody won. Merlin! Alright, where was I? Sorry, I got interrupted by a little monster here in the... just a couple months ago, we found a little monster and included him into our household. He's been a pleasure and a lot of chaos, but it's been fun overall. So, after I released that video, I was getting comments on the Heroes of Might and Magic 3 board game, and people were interested in all the monsters that were included there, the cards, so I figured, you know what, I'm going to release that video. And, you know, the funny thing is, I released the video just showing the monster cards for that board game, and it got more views than a lot of my actual, like, more monster focused content. And that just shows you why I don't need to pull my hair out anymore and push content that I used to, or that's so relevant to monster lore and things like that, because, well, people view the videos from outside of the subscription basis, and the people inside the subscription, let's say it all together, don't get notifications. Continuing, really, I'm fine. YouTube's been like this for years. It's all good. The next video that I did release was another everything monster in the board game, the Seventh Citadel, which came after the Seventh Continent, because I watched a lot of videos on best solo games, and, you know, I try to build up toward the best collection I find for solo gaming, for playing by yourself, but you can also play by far majority of these games with other people, and still usually it's funner with somebody else. But some games are just designed very well to be playable by yourself, because in the end, if you're going to have somebody else with you, you're going to be kind of leading them on, and is that the right word? Kind of bossing them around if you know what to do. And I think you kind of get what I mean. When you understand a game really well and the second person is just playing out what you both know they should be playing out anyway, so you might as well do it yourself. That kind of situation. So anyway, Seventh Citadel is one of those top games for solo play. And to be honest, not much monstrous, because it is a full card-based game. You lay out the cards slowly as you explore the lands, and there are monsters in them, but I'd have to like look through all the cards to actually find them. There's not really miniatures. There's tiny player miniatures, humanoid miniatures, very tiny ones. Not too interesting there. And I think I did share that. I mean, there wasn't much else to share. Unless, again, I went through all the cards, and I'm not going to do that. I don't want to spoil it to myself as well. After that, I painted up the Gloomhaven, because I started working on my actual serious playthrough of Gloomhaven, which is just a huge game. Like, to play through the whole campaign, it's something like 80 scenarios. It's a lot. I decided to play as these two characters in it, or these two race classes, and these are painted to more of a gaming standard rather than display and such. So a little bit quicker, a little bit less detail. Then the next video is about going over all my games and talking about my first impressions as I played all of them at least 3 times. I think this video is great if you want to kind of join me on this journey of solo board gaming, but I feel like it has one of the worst thumbnails, and it's hard to choose a good thumbnail for it unless I just put like the hottest games on there, and I don't want it to be too clickbaity. I'm not sure. At this point, I think it's too late for me to remake the thumbnail. I don't think anybody cares, although who knows, maybe someday I will, but I don't know what to do, because it's me talking about all these games and how I feel about them and first impressions, and yeah, that's it. What can you do other than show a picture of a bunch of board games? After that, I painted up an old classic mini of mine from the Dark World, pretty old board game. Not the best minis. This is where I started kind of pushing my level in painting and using these old ones to advance myself in my skill as well and kind of spend more time on them. This is more for display level and almost competition level, I would say, as the release after that was my Goblin from great old Heroquest board game. If you don't know what Heroquest is and you are interested in solo board gaming, then you should educate yourself a little bit on what Heroquest is, because that started that whole world. There's a beautiful video, one of my favorite videos on YouTube by Bardic Broadcasts, talking about why Heroquest is the best. Excellent video. He's a natural. What can I say? I wish he made more. In this, you can see the miniature that I painted when I was a wee lad, maybe 10, 11 years old, before I even got any acrylic paints, and I painted with model paints, which are terrible for miniatures, oil-based paints, but yeah, like model paints like you'd use for model cars and ships and stuff. So that's how I painted him before. Then I cleaned him up somewhat and repainted, so it's the same model over, and I painted him, spending a lot of time on him, and I wanted something simple so that I can really push my skill and get the blending down, so you don't see any brush strokes or anything. So what you see in the thumbnail in the video, I mean, nothing's doctored, nothing's edited. So happy with how that came out, and it's a nice homage to the old Heroquest. I don't have the full board game anymore, but I do have some of the minis left out of it. After that, I got my art table and a little bit of a painting studio set up, as this is after we moved to a new location. I did some research in the best light. So if you're interested in a good light for drawing, sculpting, painting, anything artistic where detail and color is important to you, and brightness as well, although brightness you can always double the light, but this one has it all for the price that I found on Amazon. I looked at a lot, and when I buy something, I research the hell out of it. Once I get it, I forget all the details and things like that, like a video card. That's why I like to share that, because I want to save you the headache or mistakes along the way. And what this light had, maybe there's better options, but I don't think so. Not for the price that this light was, because they charge a lot of money for lights that have, I forgot what it's called, the largest color spectrum. It'll give you the best greens, the best reds, and things like that. So this one had a really good spectrum of that, great lumens. And then it only has, the only negative, it only is limited to 3 of the warmth levels. So it's like cool, warm, and then in the middle, although the one in the middle is kind of, it's perfect for me. I think it should work. You'd have to be extremely nitpicky to change where it's at. I think I forgot what the number is, so I'm not going to say it. It's 5,000 or 4,700. Next to my door came Primal, The Awakening, another awesome board game, boss battler. I learned it now. I've played it 3 times, and now I'm going to start my campaign in it. So that's fun. That's kind of a side thing for the channel, so don't worry if you're not interested. If you are a little interested, I'm not filming a playthrough. I've explained it in another video. It's a plan I have to narrate through an entire playthrough of a board game, without having you, sit and suffer through the boredom of me playing something you completely don't understand. It's more me just showing you how I beat this, okay, then what happens next, what the story says I did next, and that kind of thing. So it's a narrated playthrough, cinematic narrated playthrough, I'd almost call it, although less cinematic. That's what I plan to do as well. So it's only tidbits of me playing, but it's really so you can see what the world is like, the lore, without having to play it. It's a cool concept. So anyway, I looked at the miniatures in that, and they're pretty awesome because they're your regular 32 scale, I think millimeter scale characters fighting these all big monsters, because it's a boss battler. You're fighting one at a time, and they're big. After that is probably my most shameful videos, and it's not something I'm ashamed about or disappointed. I'm ashamed of with YouTube's exposure, because this sculpt is something that I spent a lot of time on, a lot of time and sweat and just headache on. If you're an artist and you work on something like sculpture or like bigger, longer pieces, you know the pain of working through an artwork, and then the dopamine that finally hits at the end, the reward, the satisfaction. But you may see that whole journey as quite painful. That's a good point that H.R. Giger even made back when I was going over his advice and stuff like that. I mean, I see that often with art, is some of it's like fun, but a lot of it's just work and pain and just working through it and fighting through it to get it done. And different art, different perspectives too. But in this situation, this was a lot of effort, and what I call like under 400 views on it, and that's after now months, which is just insanity. I don't want to say it in an arrogant kind of way. It's insanity to what kind of views and potential the channel had in the past and exposure. I mean, this random sculpture would have more views at the first day of launching this channel than it does now, and I have over 100,000 subscribers. It's just a little bananas how YouTube sets it up. Just don't give us that number. Let us just have our expectations set of what the reality is. It's just going to be a search engine, and none of your followers are going to find out unless you build a separate community to ensure that they see your stuff more. Anyway, after that, I painted up the bugbear from another classic old mini from Dragon Strike. This bugbear, and I didn't want to spend too much time on him. It is a non-metal style of painting on him, so no shiny metallic paints, and the goal here was using a triad of colors, so red going with blue. Forgot what the third color is because you can really kind of explore in each one of those colors to make it work. So this guy was built of a triad of colors. That's why he's got the blue armor and weapon, or the metallics, and I thought that came out pretty cool. Again, the point wasn't for me to exaggerate on the quality of it quite like I did with the Goblin of Heroquest, but to get to good quality in a decent amount of time. Because eventually, I'm going to give these away or sell them, and when you put so many hours into something, you have to price yourself by the hour, right? So these things get to a ridiculous price, and you got to think, who's going to buy a classical painted mini this big for $200-300? So that's why I set different goals, but I do want to push my levels of painting. These minis will be coming out in a mixed way. Some will be to competition level, some will be to really good level, and some will be for gaming. And next up, we have this Primal the Awakening. As you saw before, this is from one of the expansions that was included. This is, I forgot this monster's name, but it's kind of the T-Rex's, dinosaur-ish sort of monster there. And this one came out pretty well as far as the exposure. I think it looks great. I think it's a bit higher than just gaming quality, so I do have to watch myself on that because I have still a lot of these monsters to work through, and I don't need all of them to be display quality. So he's not quite competition level, but he is, I would say, better than you really need for gaming. But if you want to game in premium, then there's the monster for you. Next up, I painted another nice old classic, but this one's not from a board game. This is from a company called Reaper Miniatures. Yes, they've been around a long time, and I have the pleasure of living not that far from their headquarters. I'm going to have to visit them sometime soon. Maybe for next year's miniature painting competition, as they have a ReaperCon. So this is actually a vampire orc, and it's one of the most complicated little paintings that I did, as he has 3 light sources, red from the back, fire, lights from below, and then sort of a moonlighting from above. A little bit more complex, a fun miniature to paint. Next up, we had a monster review, where I review the monster and give it a score in tier, ultimately at what level that monster scores. This was a Mivi monster review, unlike the dragon I did before, and this was for my beloved Critters. So if you love Critters, do watch this, or if you love the concept of monster reviews, because I think that is an awesome concept, just looking at everything about the monster, from its design, the lore, its potential, everything. Next up is a Gene Stealer that I repainted. This is another mini that I painted. This was, I was about in high school, so I was a bit better at that point. I had some Citadel paints, but I upscaled the painting quality of it, and I think that's a pretty interesting video if you want to see something that's decently, maybe some of you have that skill level around, maybe a little better, and then see how I take it to another level. So it could be an interesting watch. Plus, it's a different color scheme on the Gene Stealer. It's a little bit old school, but a little bit different as well. Next up is, of course, the timing of our Halloween Monster Art Contest. It's the beginning of October 1st, every October 1st for the last almost 10 years. I have been releasing or doing the Monster Art Contest, so on the 1st I would release the announcement and the topic and the reward prize and all that, so people would know what's up, and then by the end of October, everybody submits everything, and I release the video with the winners and all the submissions and the scoring. It would be a fun collaboration that I had going too, often with other artists and such. Here's another repaint. This guy is a gargoyle from also Dragon Strike, and I took him to another level, but I didn't want to overdo it with the time spent on him, so he's about similar level to that bugbear you saw previous from the same game, Dragon Strike. I really like how he came out, because looking at that plastic gargoyle, it was always such a simple sort of mold that when you're young and you don't have that skill, or if you just haven't developed that skill to paint miniatures yet and to find things out, it's just going to look like a very simple thing if you just paint it gray and apply some brighter dry brush to make it look stony. But if you start to pull out textures and brightness and messing with light sources, that's where these simple miniatures for me shine, and they're just kind of a joy to paint. Especially another example of this is this troll from the same game, Dragon Strike. It was always a simple ugly green mini that I painted very ugly, and I always wanted to repaint it, and in this different style that I'm doing now, where there's just a light source from the front showing all the colors and then everything fading in the darkness in the back, so I can spend more time in a focused area without overdoing it everywhere. And like I was saying, pulling out little details here and there, like with this troll, pulling out the different belly tones and the dots and spots like that. It's just something I didn't think about, and not even that long ago, when I wasn't pushing my ability in painting quite as much. It's always fun to see the potential, especially in simpler miniatures, and that satisfaction that you get when you make something more complex and more just attractive and aesthetically pleasing out of something so simple to begin with. And then next up, since it is the end of October now, it's probably into November, we have the results of the monster art contest. So here I present everybody's artworks and then the top 3 that won. Although I think this year everybody won cash, because yeah, things slowed down. It was expected but unexpected to that degree. And since this was the 10th year that I've been doing a Halloween monster art contest, believe it or not, this year I'm gonna make a video of my favorite monster art submissions of all these contests over the years. Of course, a lot of them are gonna be in the top 3 spots as they were, but some weren't, and just some that really tickled my fancy and I thought were just awesome or creative. So be on the lookout for that, especially if you've been participating. You may just see your artwork again. I really look forward to making that. I think that'll be fun. After that, I painted this mummy again from Reaper Miniatures. It's an old metal miniature, literally metal miniature, and as you see, he's not too like an overly high degree of skill level, but I've incorporated different lighting, and not just lighting, but kind of tones in different areas that you'll see a lot of professional miniature painters apply to bigger forms, bigger scale miniatures, kind of like you saw that dinosaur monster I did. There's like a green lighting coming from the back. And artists are doing that more and more with miniatures, but big ones and busts, because they do it with airbrush. But when you're doing it with something tiny like this, I feel the effect is still there, and you don't even need an airbrush if you know how to kind of get that feeling. You can kind of see there's like some yellow tone, and then from a certain angle there's some purple coming in. I think it came out pretty nice for this, old school mini of a mummy that he is, Mummy King. Next up, I ran a poll, as I do. I used to do polls more on Patreon, but now I do polls even in our community tab over on YouTube. So those do really well as far as the community interactions. People like them, and now we can put images in the polls, so that's fun. I was asking what to showcase next. I have Zombicide 2nd edition, all miniatures painted, which is newer, and then this older one, which is all the painted minis of an expansion of Deep Madness, one of my first board games that I got when I was getting into this the whole new board gaming thing for me, especially Monstrous and for solo gaming. And these are awesome because this is a very Lovecraftian sort of game, and it's all body horror type of monsters, and these are game ready painted. They're nothing spectacular, but they're fun to look at, just all the designs, and that's why I present these to you guys, because some of you just are not into the figurines or the miniatures, but if you appreciate monsters, you gotta appreciate the designs. Maybe that's my visual eye as an artist, and some of you out there, but even for you guys that just get into the lore, like, you gotta appreciate appreciate, because miniatures, they get the detail in there, and if you paint them right, I mean, there's beautiful things that are affordable instead of buying these big scale things and presenting those and running out of space in your house for them. Minis just do that right. I don't know. There's something about them that just gets me going. Anyway, I recommend checking out these monster miniatures of any kind that I want to show in videos, because I do it so you can just see how cool some of the designs are. Like, you know what a griffin is, but have you seen a griffin like this? Have you seen it like this? Have you seen it out of these two kind of hybrids rather than that? What kind of environment would this one suit more for? And that's where you can go further with it. So that's why I'm such a proponent in miniatures. I finally took a break playing Gloomhaven because it took me quite a few months of playing. I didn't finally finish it, but I did get to a point where I was comfortable reviewing it. I think even before that, I've played over 30 playthroughs. No, 30 scenarios, I think. So yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time, and I'm maybe halfway through it, maybe a little bit more, but this was my review of Gloomhaven as a solo game. And the cool thing again with my board game reviews, why I push them, because I wouldn't be doing them unless I did something a little more unique. I wouldn't like make them all set up as much as this. I do them randomly, but I have like the thumbnails set up a certain way, because at the end of the whole review I have different areas I review them in, kind of like I do with my monsters, but at the end I kind of put extra points or minus points from my own perspectives and what I appreciate personally in a game. So I explain that so you as a viewer can watch those videos and score it as I'm scoring it, but then add or subtract points in areas that you agree or disagree with me, and then tally up a final score against my total to see how it fits and how well it scores to you. And not just from my opinion, but from you. So you can get a customized scores from viewing my board game review videos. That's why I kind of enjoy doing them, and I kind of push them. And then my newest idea that I've had the idea for a long time, and I couldn't find it out there because I wanted to learn how to do combat in D&D, and just that. And when you haven't learned D&D and in a long time, and you're just trying to figure out how combat works, it's not that simple. You gotta learn a lot of things, and the stat blocks, and especially when you're creating a monster and how to get that to balance out, and then challenge rating. It's more complicated than you would expect, but maybe less so than I think it is. This is a new series where I just have two monsters battling out, and it won't necessarily continue to be two now. That's the fun thing about this, is this gives me an opportunity to do is take any monster out there and let's mix them up. Let's say the Predator and Gene Stealer Tyrannid from Warhammer 40k. So a Predator, the Yautja of the Predator, the movies, going against a Gene Stealer in combat. So you can make those rules make sense through D&D fashion by the stats that you apply to it by comparing different monsters. So you can mix match all sorts of monsters, and then it's not just like playing out and creating lore about how these things would fight, or playing around like a kid with two pieces of plastic in your hand. It's more that now you have rules set to make it a realistically happening battle. So I'm still managing what each monster does, and I'm thinking what is the best thing for each monster to do, but then it's up to the roll of the dice and how they're affected by the different stats of that monster to really play out what happens in that battle. So this is one of the best ways to see a realistic battle between two of your beloved monsters. I love that concept. And being a lover of miniatures and already painting them up, I'm excited for these series, and it's doing all right. These first two videos are getting, they're not great compared to, years before, but they're doing better than videos as of late. And people are seeing the vision I'm seeing it, or the appreciation in it that I am. And I'm just excited because I'm getting so many ideas now, not only matching up different monsters, but then like matching up two of these against one of this, like, or how many will it take for this, for that, or, that kind of thing. And then getting out of D&D monsters or old school fantasy, right? Or fantasy monsters, and getting it to movie monsters. Or cryptids, having a series of just cryptids fighting. So you got, the Dogman fighting those frog people. I forgot what that cryptid's name is. So you got maybe 3 of those frog men against the Dogman. I think that's just awesome. The rules, even behavioral rules are there, how aggressive the monster gets. And all that takes an effect as you're playing this out. So it really is one of the most realistic ways you can remake a battle between things that just don't exist. And making these thumbnails, it's such a time killer for me, but it's so enjoyable because I'm trying to match up the monsters in the thumbnail as much as I can to the miniatures. And sometimes people were confused why this monster didn't have that weapon. The monsters the weapons have that you're seeing battling out are what the miniatures are literally holding. If the miniature has an axe and a shield, that's what he's got. That's what he's fighting with. If he's got a slingshot, that's what he's fighting with. That's how I want to keep it, and that's why there's going to be a variety of different miniatures and stuff like that, but that's also why the thumbnail looks the way it does. I'm trying to really give life to the miniatures that are actually taking place in the battle, in the arena. And a cool feature, if you didn't know, if you're not a content creator on YouTube, YouTube now gives you a chance to upload more than one thumbnail, so then it alternates it as it gets exposure on YouTube, and it shows you which one is performing better. I think that's awesome. I've wanted something like that for so long because I'm always like asking people, which one do you think is better? Which one's more effective? So as in this example, you can see these two goblin and orc examples that I had going, only the goblin changed here, and then I even had some text change here. YouTube showed me that the text worked better, so it's pretty cool to have that tool on YouTube now. And I used it as well with the next video, which is from 2025. So I'm done for 2024. That was the final video of 2024, and I think it was actually a good ending and a good start, because the first video of this year, I'm going to spoil it. We're going to talk about it next year when I do this review, but I got to mention it because it's the thumbnail thing again. This ogre versus bugbear video. And again, I tested out these two thumbnails. You see how different they look? One of them looks goofier because the ogre looks goofier in it, but the miniature is kind of goofy. So it works, and that's the one that's performing better so far. Let me know what you guys think. Which one of these two you think is better? I personally like the first one, but I can go with the goofy ogre, but then I don't want that goofy real human dressed in like a bugbear costume looking one, but rather the other one. It's always fun making these images and trying to, like, battling the system, trying to get it to look as much as the miniature as possible. And it's funny because you know what? Let's talk about the bugbear next year. That's all. The last video for this year was the goblin versus the orc. Let's see how many monster review videos we can get into this year. There's not going to be board game reviews, maybe, sure, as I go through that, but don't worry about it. You're not going to see it if you don't want to. But as far as board game unboxings, there shouldn't be too many this year. I've got a lot of back stock on that to work through and miniatures to work through. And that's why you're seeing a lot of that, because I have a lot of that waiting for me and waiting for someone to give it life, for that Frankenstein. And I am that Frankenstein, bringing life and color to this precious plastic. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being through this journey with me through 2024 and the years prior, if you have been. And if you're very new here, then welcome. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your first impressions. It's going to be interesting because if you look at my backlog of videos, I'll just repeat it again. It's interesting, right? So see you around this digital arena and hopefully in my miniature one as well.